Well, thanks everybody for joining us. There's almost 170 folks from all across the country. It's great to see. And Harry and I are both honored to talk to you today about a project that has been in development for many, many years in Idaho's Wood River Valley called the Wood River Valley Collaborative Forest Enhancement Project. So I want to zoom us into where we're at in Idaho. The Blaine County region, which includes 5 different cities, is within the state of Idaho, right in the center of Idaho. If we zoom in here, you'll hear us use the terms Sun Valley, Blaine County, Wood River Valley. It's basically a group of small mountain towns centered around Sun Valley, a mountain resort that some of you may have heard of before. And it's at high elevation, over a mile high. It's a mixed temperate forest with sagebrush steppe. It really is a big economic driver in Idaho, over 12,000 jobs and billion-dollar GDP. And the forests in this area are a combination of planted street trees interwoven with wildland urban interface landscapes. So you're going to see a lot of collaboration between the cities themselves and the surrounding large forest landowners, the state of Idaho, BLM, and U.S. Forest Service. And here's a final look. This is a view from Sun Valley Resort looking up at what's called Bald Mountain. This is the main ski hill. And you can see in this picture that we'll have a few times throughout the presentation some of the forest treatments that are being done, led by the U.S. Forest Service, Sun Valley Company, and National Forest Foundation. So we'll talk a lot about cross-boundary collaboration and how together we're improving the pace and scale of planning and action on the ground. So this picture right here is our planning area. All these crosshatched areas are the areas that my company is working with all the partners to focus on the cities. So we have Sun Valley and Ketchum here. We have some county land here that has high wildfire potential, city of Hailey and city of Bellevue. And then this is Bald Mountain right here, and all the forests. You can see the different colors of different property ownerships around here. So it's really a blend of different ownerships and a great opportunity to work together. And this shows you the intensity. So this is a really intense area of potential fire that we're looking at. How do we treat those areas? Now there's been a challenge on this over 30,000 acres of it's a big wildfire hazard, but as a lot of you know that have lived or recreated in mountain towns, those people like to live in the forest. So there's a balance of living in the forest and also being safe from wildfire. We are actually in the Wood River Valley among the top 10 counties in all of the U.S. for income inequality. So Harry will talk a lot about that. But the good news is there's a ton of opportunity for public and private investment. And we're overcoming these challenges ahead of us through really core partnership, collaboration, and trust. So our discussion today is really going to focus around that story of collaboration. How has our work evolved over time in the Wood River Valley to deal with the change of an impacting climate, increasing population, increasing disparity in the economy, and how the U.S. Forest Service state and private forestry programs implemented in partnership with ourselves, Idaho Department of Lands, and U.S. Forest Service are helping to make a difference not only on National Forest System lands, but also on state, private, and municipal lands. I want to thank a lot of our friends who aren't in this presentation today. The U.S. Forest Service has funded this work. Ecosystem Sciences Foundation, close friends and partners of ours that do all our GIS work. They are instrumental in making the connections to make this all happen. The cities of Ketchum, Sun Valley, and Blaine County invested financially in this project before we received the Forest Service funding. It was a big reason we received the Forest Service funding. Idaho Department of Lands partners with us on all this work. And then National Forest Foundation, they weren't able to make it today, but they are really that driver on the public lands. And so all the work that we'll talk about today is a credit to all of these people. So I'm going to kick it over now to Phil, who is going to do a few poll questions to get an idea of who is in the audience with us today. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Harry. And this is a perfect segue to a quote I've heard a lot, and I'll probably butcher it, so this would be paraphrased from Winston Churchill that says, don't ever let a crisis go to waste. And so what you see and what Harry talked about is the great partnerships that have come out of natural disasters in the valley. And as Harry mentioned, there's a combination of passionate professionals, residents, and even some financial resources that can really help deal with these crises that come up in the valley. And the way we came to be involved in the work in the valley started in 2018 when my partner Tim McGuire with Ecosystem Sciences Foundation was speaking to the Idaho Association of Cities, and the Sun Valley Economic Development Director was like, wow, you guys are doing urban tree canopy assessments around the valley or around the whole state, and what if we could get something like that? So what is fun about this story is that it started not from your traditional urban forestry crowd, not from your traditional tree community. It came from the economic development community and wanting to invest in the tools and resources to drive the right policy decisions. So from that presentation that Tim provided, we started these conversations. Tim's involved in the Idaho Lands and Resource Coordinating Council with Idaho Department of Lands. And so we put together a landscape scale restoration project, and that's how it all came together. One of the big successes of this project that's different from many others we've been involved in is the cities of Ketchum, Sun Valley, and Blaine County all invested financially in this before we got the federal grant. I think that's a big reason we got the federal grant, but it also allowed us to start the work earlier. And then we were successful in securing the grant in 2020, and now we're really getting kicked off in all the details of it that we'll talk about today. It was funny as we got going with this, we've been involved a little bit with the 5B Restoration Coalition that Harry talked about. And whenever you come up with a new project or idea and you're convening more people, there can be a little bit of confusion among the stakeholders. So we talked about that. What are our role? How are these different? And so luckily we have a great partnership with National Forest Foundation and U.S. Forest Service, and we can bring all these pieces together. So what you see is a lot of that 5B work is focused on the surrounding public land. Now they're really focused on some bald mountain stewardship on the mountain that I showed you, the ski hill. There's a lot of forest health issues that they're focusing on. And then we're focusing on the state, private, and municipal lands around that. And by working together, we're having a much greater impact. We actually have a Joint Chiefs proposal on the books right now at the Washington office that they're looking at, and it sounds favorable for us as well. So I think it's a really good story of collaboration across all landscapes. And keep those questions coming in. I see some great questions that we'll get to at the end here. We'll have plenty of time for questions. So this is how it all came together. We completed the GIS assessments for the cities and county that were able to fund that. We secured the landscape scale restoration funding, and that funding is going on the ground right now. We were able to expand the GIS assessment to the cities of Hailey and Bellevue to the south. And some great news I just received the other day, and I noticed one of our city council members from the city of Hailey is here. They are providing more funding to this as well. So I think that's a good lesson in collaboration. In the beginning of our project, we weren't able to have everybody on board, but successfully, as we grow that trust, as people understand what's happening, we're able to get more financial investment to have a greater impact and make a greater difference. So that's a great thing, and thank you so much, City of Hailey, for that. Our planning process might be a little different than your typical planning process. We all know the standards of gather data, return a report, and what we do is we spend a lot of time building the trust and relationship. So the conversations and work really started in 2018, and we only received the funding 2 years later. So we've already done a lot of work to get to where we're at today. A fun thing as we look at the GIS data is that often in these projects, we are delivering the GIS data at the end of the project. In this one, the GIS data is the first deliverable, and so we're able to use that data and those tools throughout the whole planning process. And so it's really important to us to have solid scientific-based foundation of data to inform our planning decisions. And then we work together with the stakeholders to make that happen. As you saw in some of what Harry talked about, it's very diverse on the issues and opportunities in the valley. We're really focused on the forest health piece, but they're also going through hazard mitigation right now that we're informing their work with FEMA. We're looking at some FEMA funding opportunities. We're looking at economic development, of course, recreation. All these things flow together, and so that's really important. The key deliverables, for those of you that like to see exactly what's being delivered through the project, the GIS assessment, which has been completed, that supports the decision making. We met in July to kick off our planning process. We'll take over the course of the next year and work with each of the cities. We're going to have a regional plan and also individual city plans. And as we look at the data, we'll talk a little bit about some cities want more trees, some cities want less trees, and there's important reasons for that. And so we're not providing a blanket kind of approach to our planning process. It's very stakeholder driven. And then we're going to be sharing some stories throughout the course of our time together with local stakeholders and potentially regionally and nationally. And hopefully, as Harry talked about, the Wave 5B Restoration Coalition grew and was really focused around that one event. What we hope is this will continue to grow collaboration so that we can continue to work together and make a difference. And when a crisis happens, rather than having to reconvene everybody, we'll all be really focused and hopefully reduce the amount of natural disaster issues and also just make the community more resilient as we grow. Here's a look at our GIS data, and Tim is on with us today but not able to speak, so if I have any questions I can't offer as far as our GIS data, we can follow up with you. But what we found when we came in is pretty typical. They didn't have high resolution data, so we're able to develop that for them. And that allows them to focus on hazard mitigations for fire and flood, looking at economic opportunities, where should we plant more trees, how can we look at environmental justice issues, focusing on water quality, habitat, climate resiliency, and that's going to, like I said, even though these cities are within miles of each other, some of them have very different views of how they want to manage their resource, so that's going to be fun to work on together. The GIS data is delivered in terms of this land cover data set that has tree canopy data, potential tree planting locations. All this data is delivered to the county and the cities, and they're able to use it in there. Actually, Blaine County has a really great interactive GIS tool that we can show to you guys and follow up to this. And then we'll also be using it in all our planning processes together with them over the course of the next year. Here's a look at the results of the project area. That map that you saw before showed all this public land out here. So we are going for a lot of funding that's going to help both. But here I'm just going to focus on our work with Ketchum, Sun Valley. This is a big Blaine County area, Blaine County here, and then Hailey and Bellevue. We've got 14% irrigated vegetation. As you see, there's a lot of the scrub shrub. So you've got forested areas, but much more of kind of that high elevation scrub shrub kind of areas. And the tree canopy is at 14%, I believe, when you look at the whole area, 17% when you look at the whole area. So we also look at where can you potentially plant a tree, and I think one lesson that we've always learned through this is a first cut. We do our best with the imagery data available to come up with potential planting areas, and then we work with the cities to refine that as we grow. And the other thing that we do is we look at potential planting locations for different ecosystem services that are delivered. So air quality, for example, there's about 5,000 trees that we estimate can be planted to address air quality in transportation corridors, urban heat island areas, to address water quality near streams and wildlife habitat in the forest and streams. And so these are, again, very valuable tools to help inform our investments. And the percent tree canopy, this is one, those of you that live in big cities, everybody's excited to see that, right, and get a big high tree canopy goal. What's going to be different here is we've got that wildland urban interface. So cities might not necessarily want to plant a ton of more trees and increase their tree canopy. Sun Valley is an example of a city that the reason this number is so low is part of their area in the city is a large ski hill. And so if we were to cut that out, you would see this tree canopy go up. And a lot of these areas are high value properties. They overplanted when they originally planted, and so actually some removal of material needs to happen for view issues and opportunities, for sun and snow, for lots of different reasons. So that's why it needs to be really focused on what our stakeholders want as far as, are we adding trees, are we removing trees? This picture right here shows the red dots are focused for air quality potential planting locations, and then the yellow are the others, so we can highlight that and use those tools as we grow throughout the planning process. So now we'll start to kind of wrap up our conversations and get to some of your great questions, so keep those coming along. One thing that has been really fun about this project, we've always loved the Wood River Valley. We've recreated there, had friends there for a long time, and the opportunity to build resources to help a mountain town that, one of the unique things is it's a huge issue when it comes to wildfire, but a lot of people don't want to cut down the trees, and so that's something that we need to work on together. But thanks to this recent tour that we did, that Harry was involved in, myself, National Forest Foundation, Sun Valley Company, and U.S. Forest Service had a tour of local media to look at all the tethered logging systems they're using to treat, I think it's around 20 to 30 acres a year. And it's great. You can see in this picture a little bit of it's expensive as heck. So we need more funding to make that happen. But we also need the buy-in of the community if we're going to maintain this view shed to increase the pace and scale of this restoration, because little 20 and 30 acres at a time is not going to be enough. And so the collaboration that's happening here is just so fun to be a part of, and we're leveraging public, private, all different resources to make this happen. And it evolves and adapts over time, and it's fun to see that happen together. I'm going to segue here a little bit to Harry, and we'll kind of share this story of kind of wrapping up the take-home economic perspectives and how we're going to advance forest resilience. Yeah, very well said, Harry. And I think this is a good conversation. I'm glad we're going to have some time to talk with folks, because in the traditional urban forestry arena, a lot of people think more trees is better, more trees is better. And what we find in all the work we do is it really depends. And so that is what we're going to find through this planning process, is some places more trees will be better and some places less trees will be better. But the point is that we want a resilient forest, and that means managing it in the right way. And we've got that balance of a lot of wildland fire treatment that needs to happen in the valley that people are afraid to cut down trees to make that happen. And or when it does happen, it doesn't happen in the right way with the right people involved. What we find in the Wood River Valley is people are very passionate, they're interested, they're educated, and if you don't include them in the process, then your planning process is going to fall apart right in front of you. So to kind of wrap this up and get to questions, we're going to continue building that trust and collaboration. Danny Southard, who couldn't be here through National Forest Foundation, we're in conversations consistently about conversations with congressional delegations, city, state leadership. A lot of people with a lot of power live in this community, and it's important. I love it because it's important to make sure that what we're doing is defensible. And it also provides a huge opportunity if we can bring in the right resources to show the benefits of investing in these lands. So we're building these sound science-based tools that can justify funding investments. We're focused on forest health. Idaho now has an urban wood network, which will help with what we're doing in the Wood River Valley, not only with maybe some urban trees coming out, but also all this small diameter material that's coming off. I'm really excited about opportunities there. The wildfire mitigation opportunities, riparian restoration, community health and equity. And then we're excited about the funding opportunities with Joint Chiefs. We're looking at BRIC funding, if you've heard of that, through FEMA before. And we're really shovel ready to make stuff happen and show an impact of how we can help a small mountain town become more resilient by focusing on engaging stakeholders in a sound process. And so I'd love to turn it over to questions now. Phil, I think, is our moderator, and there's tons of questions coming in. So Phil, I'll let you manage that, and Harry and I are here to answer questions for as long as we need during the session.